Hi, welcome to my channel today. I'm with the lovely Sian from Helpful Mum, and I'll leave her link, so go follow her and like her videos and stuff. And today we are going to talk about raising feminist children and our top tips for raising feminist children. I have a daughter who is 2 and a son who is 5. If you watch us a lot, you'll know that. And Sian has
a son who's 8 and a daughter who's 6.
So we both have one of each.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing I want to touch on is what we need to do differently for boys and girls. And I know for myself, with my son, I really want him to grow up knowing that he should always get consent.
Yeah.
That is so important to me. And for my daughter, I want her to know that consent is important as well. One of the ways that I do that, because they're so tiny at the moment, is even simple stuff, like if we are playing, just dropped stuff on the floor there, if we're playing like a tickle fight or if we're play fighting, I'll always talk to my son, like when somebody says stop, we stop right away, and no means no, and that he knows that. Do you approach anything like that?
Exactly the same. So if they're fighting, or which seems to happen quite often, if they're fighting or if they're just disagreeing about something, and if she says no, I always really emphasise, if she has said no, you stop right now.
Yeah.
Because no means no. And I want him and her to know from as young as possible that no does mean no.
And I think it's the same with us as well, when we're doing, like playing with them and stuff, that they can say no, that they know they can say no to adults. And it's so important, isn't it? What other things do you approach differently with your 2? Or is everything the same?
I don't know. I do think I approach kind of the idea of girls and boys differently, and the fact that girls can do different things, exactly the same things as boys. And I probably kind of emphasise it more with my son than with my daughter, and I don't really know why. But I think that she already gets that message because she sees me doing things that are like things that men should do, like DIY. But I think that he accepts that girls can do the same things, but not in front of his friends. So I think the peer pressure element is quite difficult with him.
I think language is really important, isn't it? And I know as much as we say stuff like, you know, like we were talking earlier about throwing like a girl or running like a girl, I equally don't want my son to be constrained by saying stuff like, oh, well, boys don't cry, and
absolutely.
You know,
emotion has to be, you know, it's okay to cry, and it's okay to cry.
And that's what
you are.
I saw something on International Men's Day the other day, which was just like, well, isn't it every day of the year? And the list of complaints, it was like, well, these are all symptoms of the patriarchy. You basically, if you want to resolve these, you basically need to be feminist. Like, this is what we're fighting for, the things. And one of them was, you know, male suicide rates are high. And one big reason for that is because men are taught to hold all of their emotions in, and that they're not allowed to show emotions and be vulnerable. So, and I think that starts really young as well. So
and I think it's important that we show emotion. Like, if, you know, say when my grandma died, I was emotional in front of the children, not all the time, but they had to know that it hurt, or that if I heard a song that reminded me of her, I curse her for her Boney M obsession, because now I cry when I hear Boney M, which is just
it's like, a random artist to cry to as well.
But they need to see that you both are emotional, so they need to see my husband cry too.
This is the thing, because I think for my partner, he was brought up like that, that he shouldn't really, that boys are strong and all that, and so he very rarely cries. And mind you, I don't really cry often. Well, I do it like stuff like adverts and like, you know, babies are, oh! But you know, I don't really get upset and cry that often. But yeah, it's how do we get men who are already full adults, you know, to go, well, you need to show emotion. My partner really doesn't show many emotions at all.
See, my husband does. I think he's quite an emotional person, probably more emotional than me. And my son is very emotional too, so I think it's important that he's allowed to kind of express that emotion.
And never feels any shame associated with that.
So we've never kind of, you know, we would never sort of belittle him for crying, or, you know, it's just like, oh, come here, have a hug. And he knows, like, when I cry, he says, oh, come and have a hug, you know. So we're kind of supporting each other if we're upset, and it's not often that I do cry, but sometimes you do, and you actually feel better afterwards. I think it's kind of teaching them that actually that's part of growing up and part of being sort of a rounded person, is being able to express that emotion and to be relieved when that emotion has happened.
What do you think about, at the moment, there is a lot in the media about gender neutral stuff, gender neutral, that's actually quite hard to say out loud, gender neutral clothes and toys and everything like that. And I'm seeing a lot of it from people who aren't feminists and don't understand where that's coming from. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, people are just going over the top, they're too sensitive about everything these days, yada. When I post anything like that, that's certainly the kind of stuff I get the most heat on. What do you think about that? Do you think it's important?
I think it's incredibly important. I think when I was younger, there wasn't like such a huge gender divide. There was Lego was just Lego.
Yeah, when you see the Lego adverts from the 70s, you're like,
a little girl, and that's what Lego, Lego wasn't pink or you didn't have princesses, you just had Lego that you built things with. I mean, we had probably what would be classed as boys' toys, like we've got them downstairs. It was literally like a construction set that you actually build a house. You basically built a playhouse for yourself, but you could build different things. You could build stables or
sounds like a cool
toy. It was brilliant. So we kind of had construction toys, and I remember having Lego, all kinds of construction toys. We didn't really have dolls as kids, just because none of us were interested in them. Whereas my daughter was when she was 4, she went through a phase, 4 and 5, where she just said, I like boilish. I don't know what is boilish, just like boilish stuff. So she would only wear boys' clothes, boys dress up. But why should it be boys? She just wore dress up that she liked. And my son did at the same age, and he wore these beautiful Disney princess dresses, and he looked fabulous, and I loved that he was confident in himself to wear that and to go out in it. But I think 4 and 5 is a real development stage of trying to find out about gender and things and trying to push those boundaries.
I think it coincides with them starting school, because that's when they really start to notice the differences, I think.
That's when she went really into kind of saying she only liked boys stuff, and literally in the last 3 months she started wearing dresses, she's got dolls, she's chosen pink wallpaper, and it doesn't mean that she's changed. I think it just means she's more kind of accepting with who she is, and she's far more confident, and she doesn't have to kind of say it's boyish. She's got toys that, like a massive thing of dinosaurs that she loves playing with, and just the whole kind of idea that toys are a specific gender.
And it's like nonsense. That whole, do you operate with your genitalia? No, then it is. Well, yes, if it is, then you shouldn't be giving it to children. If no, then it's for either boys or girls.
I don't see any. I've always been quite open about whatever they want to play with. I'm happy literally with whatever they want to play with, as long as it's nothing that's like going to hurt them. I don't, I just think I really hate that everything has become, like, even if you go into Clark's or somewhere to get shoes, my daughter always gets them from the boys one, because they're sturdy, they'll last, and actually they're kind of nicer.
I've seen at Arlo's age, when he was in reception class, there was one morning, there was a little girl, she must have been about 4, and she was wearing heels, like actual heels, and a pencil skirt that was so tight she was having to take tiny little steps like a foot-bound Chinese woman. And I was like, she couldn't climb in those, she couldn't play, and how that restricts you. And people say, well, my daughter really likes to wear stuff like that, and it's like, well, yeah, because they're exposed to everything, every Disney film, or even just every show they'll see, my daughter, she's 2, and she'll go, pretty, and what she means is a dress, like that's a princess pretty, and she wants to wear those, and that's fine, as long as it's not going to constrain them from being able to physically run and play and develop. Especially at that age, when all that kind of physicality is so important to their growth in terms of their learning, because they're pushing boundaries both physically and mentally, and you need to be able to do that. So many times I've heard people saying, oh, well, young girls, and they need to cover up when they're climbing and not showing their knickers. It's like, why are they in a position where their knickers are on show anyway? They if everybody just wore the same like trousers and tops, it would be absolutely fine. And they'll go, but my daughter really wants to wear that, and it's like, well, yeah, and it's great, and we should have choice, But is it really a choice when girls so young are taught with everything that's around them that girls are meant to be pretty, and to be pretty is to wear dress and wear heels and wear makeup? It's ingrained in us. From my daughter has picked it up and before she was 2.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm a feminist. I'm not teaching her that.
Yeah.
But she's picking it up from everything that she sees, and she either goes one way or the other. She either wants to just dress in Arlo's clothes,
yeah,
or princess dresses.
Yeah.
You know,
it makes it easy when you've got an older boy and a younger girl that you
Yeah.
can then hand down the clothes, because if it was the other way around, it would be very difficult to hand down the clothes.
But even from when they were babies, I remember we were going through, when I was pregnant with Lena, we were going through the Arlo's old clothes, and I was going, well, she can wear that and she can wear that, and Matt was going, no, that's far too boyish. It's like, she's like a sack of spuds right now. She's like, you know, when it's not like she has a feminine shape. They're just exactly the same.
But isn't it funny how when you have them in the pram and they're dressed, however they're dressed, and someone says, oh, isn't that a beautiful boy, and it's a girl, and you get really offended by it?
Yeah.
It's just
like, they just got the same little bald moon heads.
Ultimately, all look the same.
I don't actually have a problem with the whole pink and blue thing.
No.
So Lena does have loads of pink and Arlo does have loads of blue. And I don't have a huge issue with that. I like them to wear different colours as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think that stops them from being able to do anything.
Yeah.
My issue is more with stuff like where, you know, if we have boys' toys, like that building construction cars, and girls' toys as dolls, the way that sets them on to
roles
a different
like
trajectory.
gender roles.
Yeah. Whereas pink and blue, I mean, they're pretty unimaginative colours in the grand scheme of things, but I don't think it, I mean, I might be wrong here. Other feminists, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm sure you will. We're not shy women. But I don't think it constrains them too much.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, ultimately, they're just a colour, aren't they?
Yeah.
And like I've always said to both of them, but pink isn't a colour for girls. It's just a colour that people like. You don't have to be a girl to like pink. And it's just, again, kind of emphasising that sort of, it doesn't have to be a specific colour for a specific
I more have an
role.
issue with it when it's like you have the like regular coloured Lego for boys and then pink coloured Lego for girls. It's like that is unnecessary, but for clothes and stuff I don't really have a huge issue with it. I know I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do the whole pink thing, and then Lena came out and I was like, pink!
Yeah, I did it because I felt like I'd probably have a child who was like me as a kid who didn't ever wear pink, so I kind of went with all the pink while she was tiny, whilst I could get away with it. But it's just seeping back in now. So
what do you personally teach your children about their bodies? Are you the kind of parent who calls them a foof and my favourite is the front bum. I think that's so confusing for children. But
we went with front bottom with my daughter.
Really?
But she invented her own word.
Oh, really?
Which is woodgie.
Woodgie? Which
we felt quite happy with, because it's not like a fluffy word. It's not like a particularly feminine word, but it's quite a like to the point, and I quite like it, and I use it myself now.
Why didn't you go with the anatomical names?
I don't know, and there's no reason particularly that we didn't. I really don't know. So we initially just went with front bottom because that's what I guess I was brought up with, but we never really talked about anything like that with my mum.
Yeah.
As a kid. And with my son, he's always just had a willy, you know, we've always called it that, and people have never kind of questioned it. I'm not a particular fan of like all the little names that people give to boys' willies. I feel, and again with girls, I didn't like people calling it a flower or it makes me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So when she came up with this word, she was about 2, and I was just like, do you know what? Yeah, let's go with that. I'm happy that that's not a feminine, flowery, kind of inviting word. It's just a no nonsense, here you go kind of word.
Yeah. See, we do try to use anatomical words so they know penis, vagina, which actually should really teach them that it's vulva, but I think that is confusing for the rest of the people who they talk to. Like, I'm not sure how my mum would, or the grandparents would respond differently. My 2-year-old was like, that's my vulva. They'd be like, what? But I mean, that's what she should be calling it. But we have slipped into calling Arlo, like saying winky.
Yeah.
But I do try and check myself. Like, so today, Mark said something, and I don't I shouldn't really retell this story because I don't actually know why he was talking about it, but I heard him, oh no, that was it. Arlo jumped on him and Mark said, mind me balls, man. And Arlo said, Daddy, you can't say that, that's a grown-up word. And he said, well, what do you call them? And Arlo came through and well, I call them, Mummy. And I said, testicles. Yeah, he went, westicles. So yeah, we try. I mean, they're a bit more complicated words, but we do try.
See, my daughter still says, if my son kind of kicks her or if she gets hurt, she says, oh, mind my balls. Oh, I'm just like, yeah, I haven't got any. What she did call them was nuts, and she once slid down at a pole and landed at a thing at the bottom and went, oh, me nuts. I was just like, where did you get that from? And no, you haven't got any. Yeah, when she started school, she told everyone she had a willy, and one of the other girls said to her, if you have, show us. Yeah. I was just like, well, you're gonna run into something there. But so she's always been very strong. She's always felt strongly that she has had a willy. And my mum said to me that when I was little, I would stand up to wee because my dad left when I was kind of 5. And I think I was sort of trying to fill his place. And I said to her, when's my willy gonna grow? No. And she was just like, sorry, sorry kiddo, that's your loss. So I totally understood where my daughter was coming from because I'd felt the same, but I don't know why we haven't kind of used the correct.
Well, for me, I just kind of wanted to take, like I try not to have sex and body parts as a taboo in our house. So for me, to me, a vagina, breasts, penis, it's the same as an ankle, a knee. You know, it's just a body. So I didn't want there to be any kind of shame attached to it, any kind of, oh, I mean, we do try and talk about how privates should be private. And the other day I said to my son, was playing with himself in the living room, and I said, look, I was like, you're old enough now that should be done. If it's okay, but if you want to do it, you do it privately. And he went, what, over in the chair there? I was like, no, like up in your room. If you need to look at it and stuff, you can do it in your room. Thinking that would mean he would just stop, but he went, okay, I'm going to my room then. And I was like, oh, is this when it begins, age 5? But yeah, I want to. And the other thing was, like, as a new parent, I'd read about how children are less likely to suffer abuse and are more likely to report it if the anatomical names are used. I don't know if they just feel, I don't know why that is, to be honest, but I've read that statistic. People say it a lot, so I was like, well, let's try and use it. Quite interesting. But it is difficult because you do kind of slip into it. But for some reason, we've gone with Winky before we went with, like, I've never called my daughters bits anything other than a vagina. Like, but I would never call mine a Mary or a foof or anything like that. It's or just
a flu. Like, my friend called it a flu, and I just like, oh.
I say vagina, and my mum goes, oh, Nyomi, that's horrible, and she calls them floozies. I'm like, oh, that's even worse. Oh yeah, and my sister calls, like you saying, front bottom. She said her daughter's front bum, and I'm like, if that was a child, and no offense because you've obviously used front bottom, but that would be thinking. I'd be thinking, I've got a bum here, and what? I'd be like, going, where does things come from? Like, what do I poo out of that? Like, I'd be so confused. But yeah, people use all these things, don't they? And
yeah, especially with girls, there seem to be so many different words that you can use, and some of them.
And then as you grow older, they're all swear words.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think you've just got to do what's right for your family, haven't you? And
yeah,
they all turn out all right in the end.
Let's hope so.
Fingers crossed. Anyway, I think we'll leave it there because we could talk about this all day, couldn't we?
Yeah.
So please give us a like, go check out Sian's channel, watch some of her videos, and if you haven't subscribed already, then what are you doing? Please do it, and we will see you next time. Without Sian though, unless you come over to my house, you're welcome to come back. Thanks very much, bye!
Bye!